So meanwhile, we've got, climate change coming before the Supreme Court. Does Amy Coney Barrett's father, having worked for Big Oil for 28 years, 29 years as the chief lawyer for Royal Dutch Shell, do you think that might have any influence on her?
Yeah, I think it's obvious that it would. Right at this moment, the cases have mostly cleared their Supreme Court hurdles. I do think, and this is the 27 cases brought against Big Oil for damages and lying by 7 state attorney generals and 20 municipalities. I think that when these cases do eventually make their way up to the Supreme Court, which it seems very likely that at some point they will, it won't be anytime soon, but I think in the end that's a likely destination. Yeah, I mean, you would think if your dad worked for Shell and you sat around the dinner table listening to Shell stories. In fact, I think he was in charge of their offshore drilling operations at one point.
The legal justification for them, yeah.
Yeah, you would think that that would bias you in some way. I mean, a lot of people made the case she should recuse herself, and not surprisingly, she didn't in the first round of cases that they heard. So, yeah, the Supreme Court, I think, under any circumstances, would be difficult for these municipalities and states. On the other hand, I can say one thing: after watching these cases for years, you never know. You just never know how things are going to be decided. So
yeah, we'll see how it goes. We're talking to Richard Wiles, the executive director of the Center for Climate Integrity. Richard, there's a new report out. This was in The Guardian last week, that 89% of Democrats accept the scientific consensus on the climate emergency, whereas only 42% of Republicans agree global warming is even a reality, and 36% of Republicans say there's no such thing as global warming. How did this become partisan? How is it, why is it in the United States that the majority of Republicans either deny or dismiss the climate crisis? The majority of Democrats are very concerned about it. And are there, does this kind of partisan occur in other nations, other democratic nations as well, other democracies as well?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, the answer to your question is, how do people think that the vaccine is going to implant a microchip in your head? How do people think the election was stolen? It's the same disinformation machine that's been running for 40 or 50 years on the right. I mean, it's very effective. There's no counterweight on the progressive side of the ledger. So it's not surprising that if you are literally running decade after decade of disinformation targeting a specific community, specific group of people, that you're going to have some effect. And then when you get a president who, Trump, who was just a disinformation machine, it's not surprising that those people are sort of lost in the wilderness when it comes to anything factual. What was interesting in that poll, though, is that when you change the question around a little bit and ask, should oil companies pay for the damages that they've caused, and particularly after you tell people that they knew and they lied, a la the tobacco companies, you get a significant increase in the number of Republicans that say, yeah, they should pay. I'll give you my best example is that even in the percentage of the survey population that thinks climate change isn't real, a significant portion of those people think that companies should pay for the damages caused by the thing that isn't real. And we saw that same kind of incredibly counterintuitive finding in polling that we've done. And I think it suggests that when you frame climate change as an issue of fairness, you can attract even the most, disinformation-abused Republicans will come around to that notion of basic fairness, that if someone knows their product is going to basically wipe out your town and then does it anyway, that they ought to pay for that. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to get, 80 or 90% of Republicans, but you can move some people that would otherwise be sort of, sucked up into this disinformation machine with basic fairness arguments, particularly as they see, all the damage around you.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting finding in there that, you don't believe it's real, but you think that the bad guy should pay. So you can
Richard,
make of that what you will.
Richards, what's the latest you're hearing out of the climate conference in Scotland?
Well, I don't think anyone thinks that this is going to be a major breakthrough. We wish that it were, but it, I think
Does
we're
the,
sort of just
does the
spinning our
fact
wheels
that
here.
neither President Xi nor President Putin have shown up have consequential impact? Or might
Sure
that just
does,
be
absolutely.
COVID
Yeah,
issues?
No, come on. That sends the signal that, they don't really care what people decide. They're going to do what they're going to do. Bolsonaro from Brazil, same, isn't going to show up. And he's another great example of the phenomena you said a minute ago, where, a country just divided, right, by a right-wing disinformation machine. I think it's significant. It's the cops have become sort of an exercise that you've got to do. Hopefully that we can sort of move the world forward, particularly on methane. If I had to say one thing that might come out of this, would be an agreement on methane. And if that's the case, then that would be a big victory. But I don't think anybody's thinking we're going to get substantial progress on carbon emissions out of this meeting.
Yeah, we have thousands of oil wells, both active and retired, all across the United States, and fracking operations and mining operations that are releasing obscene amounts of methane into the atmosphere unnecessarily. And in many cases, they've just been abandoned. Companies have gone out of business. Right. They've walked away from them. And these are significant contributors to global warming. Methane is massively more effective as a global warming agent than carbon dioxide, although it lives a much shorter period of time. So, what is anything being done in the United States? Where is there any hope around this? Is it going to take a COP26 statement to get something done?
Well, a COP26 statement would help, and it'd be more than that. I mean, people are working toward a global agreement, sort of similar to the one that has phased out, CFCs when we saved the ozone layer, or has done similar work under that treaty to phase out some potent global warming gases. So I think there's hope for a global agreement on methane. In this country, certainly, again, it's another example of where industry needs to pay for the damage that they're causing. They're going in and a lot of companies just abandon the wells or sell the wells off to, let's just say, a less qualified operator. The companies have responsibility here for these leaky wells and these abandoned wells. And the other thing about it is, there's jobs to be had, sealing up those wells that we definitely need to do, and the industry needs to take responsibility for that, and once again be held accountable for the damage they knew they were causing.
I love it.